everyone. In today's session, we are going to discuss very important section of listening module of IELTS examination. That is the last section. The fourth section of the listening module is one of the toughest section of all the four. So we will see why this is one of the difficult part of listening module of IELTS examination. So first of all, the audio that comes over here is quite fast compared to the previous three sections. So we have to make sure whatever is given in these sentences or the questions that are asked to you, you should read beforehand in order to come up with the right answer. For instance, in this paragraph only, you can see the signpost that is given is biodiversity hotspots. Okay, and Boris Vaughan, 2005. So these, these signposts you should know, and you should locate that where the audio is going so that you can get your answer properly. So now step by step we will see that how you can easily solve the last section of listening module of IELTS examination by simply knowing the synonyms for the important words and locating those words and then answering your answers properly. Let's move ahead, play the audio. I will play it and we will solve it together.
Section 4. You will hear part of a student presentation about the variety of different species that live in the world's oceans. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40 and answer questions 31 to 40.
I've been looking at ocean biodiversity, that's the diversity of species that live in the world's oceans. About 20 years ago, biologists developed the idea of what they called biodiversity hotspots. These are the areas which have the greatest mixture of species. One example is Madagascar. These hotspots are significant because they allow us to locate key areas for focusing efforts at conservation. Biologists can identify
Okay, so we can see instead of important they have used the word significant. For locating they have used to locate targets, key areas for focusing on conservation. So for what will be the answer over here? Yes, conservation will be the answer over here. So always do remember they are not going to use the same word, like you can see here important, locating, targets was given, but instead of that they have changed the vocabularies and the meaning is same. So we have to be very careful when writing the answer. Here the answer is conservation. Let's move to the next one.
Spots on land fairly easily, but until recently very little was known about species distribution and diversity in the oceans, and no one even knew if hotspots existed there. Then a Canadian biologist called Boris Worm did some research in 2005 on data on ocean species that he got from the fishing industry. Worm located 5 hotspots for large ocean predators like sharks and looked at what they had in common. The main thing he'd expected to find was that they had very high concentrations of food, but to his surprise that was only true for 4 of the hotspots. The remaining hotspot was quite badly off in that regard.
Okay, so they said that the hotspots were rich in food, but that was not always true for the rest of the hotspots. So here the question was, were not always rich in, what will be the answer? Food will be the correct answer, because initially he was saying that food was a lot, but it is not correct in regard to other 4 hotspots. That means were not always rich in food. Yes, food will be the correct answer. Let's move to the next one.
But what he did find was that in all cases, the water at the surface of the ocean had relatively high temperatures, even when it was cool at greater depths.
Okay, it is very important to note over here that what they are using, they are saying that at the means they wanted to know the location where the temperature is higher. So it is at the surface of the water, they said. It could be bottom of the ocean also, but they said surface of the water. So the correct answer for this will be had higher temperature at the surface of the water. So surface is the correct answer.
So, this seemed to be a factor in supporting a diverse range of these large predators. However, this wasn't enough on its own, because he also found that the water needed to have enough oxygen in it. So these two factors seemed necessary to support the high metabolic rate.
As I have already mentioned, in this synonyms are very important. You can see here the audio says that enough oxygen. Okay, that means had sufficient oxygen. So the correct answer over here is oxygen. Yes. Let's move to the next one.
Of these large fish. A couple of years later, in 2007, a researcher called Lisa Balance, who was working in California, also started looking for ocean hotspots, but not for fish. What she was interested in was marine mammals, things like seals, and she found 3 places in the oceans which were hotspots.
Marine mammals. This was really very clear. First, he said about the name of the scientist, which year, and looking for hotspots for marine, and your answer, that is mammals.
And what these had in common was that these hotspots were all located at boundaries between ocean currents. And this seems to be the sort of place that has lots of the plankton that some of these species feed on. So now people who want to protect the species that are endangered need to get as much information as possible. For example, there's an international project called the Census of Marine Life. They've been surveying oceans all over the world, including the Arctic. One thing they found there, which stunned other researchers, was that there were large numbers of species which live below the ice, sometimes under a layer up to 20 meters thick.
Okay. So
Some of
now
these species-
he is saying that the new ocean species living below the ice. Okay. So under the ice and below the ice will be the same, right? So what will be the answer over here? Yes, the correct answer will be ice. Let's move to next one.
Had never been seen before. They've even found species of octopus living in these conditions. And other scientists working on the same project but researching very different habitats on the ocean floor have found large numbers of species congregating around volcanoes, attracted to them by the warmth and nutrients there. However, biologists still don't know how serious the threat to their survival is for each individual species. So a body called the Global Marine Species Assessment is now creating a list of endangered species on land, so they consider things like the size of the population, how many members of one species there are in a particular place, and then they look at their distribution in geographical terms, although this is quite difficult when you're looking at fish because they're so mobile. And then thirdly, they calculate the rate at which the decline of the species is happening. So far...
Okay, so they are clearly mentioning that the rate of decline that is happening. Okay, so the answer will be the rate of decline. Let's move to next one.
Only 1,500 species have been assessed, but they want to increase this figure to 20,000. For each one they assess, they use the data they collect on that species to produce a map showing its distribution. Ultimately, they will be able to use these
to produce a map to show its distribution. So what will be the correct answer? To produce. Here produce cannot come because you can see the synonym for make, they have used produce. To produce a map for distribution. So to show its distribution. So what will be the answer? Yes, distribution map. Okay, map will be the correct answer.
to figure out not only where most species are located, but also where they are most threatened. So, finally, what can be done to retain the diversity of species in the world's oceans? Firstly, we need to set up more reserves in our oceans, places where marine species are protected. We have some, but not enough. In addition, to preserve species such as leatherback turtles, which live out in the high seas but have their nesting sites on the American coast, we need to create corridors for migration, so they can get from one area.
Create corridors for migration. That means establish migration corridors. As corridors is already written over here, so we will write migration corridors. Let's move to next one.
To another safely. As well as this, action needs to be taken to lower the levels of fishing quotas to prevent overfishing of endangered species. And finally, there's the problem of bycatch. This refers to the catching of unwanted fish by fishing boats. They're returned to the sea, but they're often dead or dying. If these commercial fishing boats used equipment which was more selective so that only the fish wanted for consumption were caught, this problem could be overcome. Okay, so does it...
Here, what is the answer? Consumption will be the correct answer. Catch fish only for the purpose of consumption. Okay, in the end, they are talking about the problem of bycatch, that means catching of unwanted fish. Okay, however, these fishes are returned to the oceans, but the problem is most of them die. Okay, so here they are just showing one problem, that catch fish only for the purpose of consumption. Okay, so this is all about 31 to 40 question and how you can easily do this exercise by locating the correct synonym, and you can clearly write the answer by knowing the appropriate word that can come in the blank. Okay, thank you so much guys, this is all.